So this is our first day on the job. It's like mid-August, hot, humid. We have just a bunch of woods where we need to build this house. So we decided to clear it ourselves with kind of minimal equipment, which I'm not sure if it was a good idea or not. We just didn't have anyone else that was available to get going on it right away. For our final step of the process, clearing the lot, we had to dig these giant stumps up. We actually had to rent this bigger machine. We had a smaller one to start with. It would not do it. And this took about 2 days in total. We had the lot clear, ready to stake out the house. So here we're just staking out the rough dimensions of the house just to make sure it's going to fit. And we're also realizing, wow, this site is way more sloped than we thought. There's going to be like 10 feet of drop between the highest point and the lowest point where this house has got to sit. We marked out the outlines of our foundation dig here with some all-purpose flour and then had to switch excavators again. And digging this, it looks super easy on camera, but it's way steeper in real life. And I was actually sliding, thought I was going to tip a couple times. It was a real challenge to keep the machine level and get this thing dug. Our next step here is getting ready for the concrete pour. We're setting these grade pins that will be the top elevation of all the concrete going in. And these footings also step down several times because of the slope. So the grade pins on those are set at 8-inch increments from the top of the highest level of the foundation so that our 8-inch tall blockwork will stack in like bricks nice and easy. And we're already at our final step of prepping for the concrete pour on the footings, adding these bulkheads. And these are basically just little dams for the concrete to keep it running out level and then drop straight down. And right now we're sitting at day 8 of our project. Next, we had to set up for laying our block foundation. We had to carry all the blocks for one. Then in the lowest corner, we set up these vertical poles to hook our string blocks on to make it easier to pull those lines. And after just 1 day of laying block here, we were starting to get the feel for how tall this foundation was going to be, especially on the low side. It was time to break out the scaffolding. So our crew is definitely better carpenters than masons. It took us about 3 solid days to lay these 1,000 block. And after that, it was time to set up and dig the porch footings. As you'll see by the end, this house has a porch that wraps all the way around it. I think it's like 120 linear feet of deck, tons of these footings, all on a slope. Took us a while to dig them. As for smoothing up the inside of the foundation, we should have thought ahead and done it with the excavator before we finished the block, but we didn't, so we ended up shoveling for a few hours here to get it smoothed up. And our final step of the block foundation here, after we had poured the cores solid with concrete and set anchor bolts, is to add this coat of stucco to the outside. It helps waterproof it and also looks better than the bare block. Now at about 3.5 weeks into the project, we got our first delivery of lumber on the job. We started putting on these mud sills, which are pressure treated plates on the block, so that we could build these walls on top of the lower part to bring it up flush with the top of the upper part. And we decided to do this instead of laying block up this extra 8 feet on the whole lower part, because it would have taken us forever and cost more money. With our foundation now complete, we could build our floor. We had these trusses engineered and built specifically for this house. They're free span, meaning they go wall to wall, no intermediate beam needed in the middle, and they're 2 foot deep. The next morning, we started in with half the crew installing the subfloor on these trusses, and the other half the crew installing this waterproofing membrane on the outside of the foundation where we're going to backfill with dirt. We also added a French drain with gravel behind this wall to keep water pressure from building up behind it, and then spent the rest of the day doing some general smoothing up just so we could walk around, get around the site easy for the rest of framing. Now at 4.5 weeks into the project, subfloor is done. I helped the homeowner come up a walkboard onto her floor for the first time and check out the view, and she actually cried tears of joy. It was amazing. We started our wall framing with the back wall, and this is the shortest wall. It's about 8 feet tall. And then the roof will go up from there to a really tall wall on the front. It's a single pitch, modern looking house with a bunch of glass looking at the view in the front wall. We framed these front tall walls laying flat on the floor, just like the rest of them, because we decided as a crew of 6, we could lift them up and stand them. And we did, but just barely. After we had framed the back and the front wall, we had to frame in these angled side walls, and that was a lot more work. All angled cuts, all angled everything. We finally got it figured out and done, connected the front and the back. Now at 5 weeks into the project, time to build a roof. And although we've done almost everything up to this point by hand, we needed a crane to help us with this one. With the trusses set, we now have the main body of the house framing complete, but we are way far from being done. There's post and beam covered porches on both ends, a huge deck, and by the way, there are no overhangs on these because we're going to build them with a post and beam look, and that was a real process too. But first we got going with the rest of the interior walls here, and all of the ones that run the same direction as the trusses that don't hit exactly under a truss need this blocking to terminate into on top, something to nail the top plate to. And it was that day we realized we didn't read the plans right on this wall that's going to support the deck, and we needed to add another 2 feet to it, so Jamie was able to take care of that. On this high side of the house, we had framed all of the walls without putting the wall sheathing on them before we stood them up to save time and weight. Well, now it was time to pay the price for that. We had to scaffold up and go up, I don't know, I think it was 6 rows of sheathing from the ground up to get this side ready for the deck to go on. And it turned out that just getting these 8x8 posts that are about 16 feet long down the hill and stood straight up was a real challenge. We did the first one with the machine. That was scary, so we ended up carrying the rest by hand and then just pushing them up with a crew of 6 and then bracing them off. Once we had these posts set, we had to build a scaffold using the posts as part of the scaffold to be able to get up high enough to set the girder on the post. We also put a band against the house, and then we'll just fill in the joists between those. On this side of the house, we made a change to the plan here. We cantilevered these deck joists 2 feet over the girder. On the plan, they butted into it, but we were able to move the girder 2 feet up the hill and save ourselves from having to use 20-foot long 8x8s. We had to attach the last little section of deck here that's at the entryway to this retaining wall that needed to be there to hold the dirt back for the parking area. So here we're going back on those same deck joists that we just installed and cutting the ends in a nice straight line using a chalk line for reference. To wrap up our deck framing here, we removed any of the bracing that wasn't needed or was in the way. Then we checked every post again to make sure it was perfectly plumb before we backfilled. Then we were able to go back and add this bracing to keep the deck laterally strong. With the deck framing now complete, which by the way is almost the same square footage as the inside of the house, that's why it took us a while, we decided as a safety measure we should add this temporary railing around the whole thing since it's so high in the air. Now, a solid 8 weeks into this project, we did our first remodel job of a house that was not yet complete. What we're doing is cutting a hole in the wall to add a bump out to add 2 extra feet of space in the back of a closet that just wasn't quite big enough. Probably the hardest part about doing this whole little bump out addition was sealing around all the joists that run now through this inside space and on out to the deck, which is outside space. Those have to be completely watertight and flash so that no water could ever run back in. And shifting gears a little bit for the next phase of our project here, we spent a few days at the shop pre-finishing all of these fir beams and tongue and groove that are going to make the post and beam porches on this house, and they are going to look amazing. With all the materials now prepped and delivered to the job site, we started in building these overhangs onto the trusses first. If you remember, there were no overhangs when we set them. That's because we're adding these exposed ornate overhangs on the front and on the back. We had to notch through the sheathing to get them going, and we lapped these pieces of wood way back in under the trusses for strength. Next, we got going framing the porch roofs, and again, they're out of that Douglas fir that we had pre-finished, and I just really love the natural color of Douglas fir as an accent, especially right on the front of the house. It really adds a lot here. This was tedious work though, with exposed framing like this, post and beam. There's no room for error on your notches or your cuts. Everything has to fit perfect because the framing is the final finished thing here. After putting the tongue and groove decking onto the rafters, we then added an additional roof sheathing on top of that to give the whole deck a thickness where the roofing screws or nails wouldn't pop through the bottom and make a huge mess underneath. Up next, we put these 2x4 purlins on the rest of the roof surface to fur it up to match the thickness of the tongue and groove decking we'd done on the overhangs and on the porch roofs. Then we could attach our sheathing to that, and it actually worked really well. I liked having the purlins actually versus nailing straight to the top of the trusses because you have a full 3.5 inch width to hit instead of 1.5 inches. With all of the roof sheathing now installed, we did apply this additional layer of underlayment by Zip System. It's a peel and stick, and it's because this is such a low pitch roof. It's a 2.5 12, which shallow pitch roofs like this do not shed water as good as steep roofs, so it's just an extra precaution. And now, almost exactly 3 months into this project, it is dried in, the framing is done, time to put in some windows. And on the inside, work continued as well to do all the blocking we would need for cabinetry, towel bars, toilet paper holders, anything you can think of like that. Our window installation only took 1 day. These vinyl windows are fast to install. You just nail through a flange. So right away, we were able to get going with the exterior trim and the siding. The main body of the house is this horizontal lap siding. Pretty easy to install, except for where we have to notch around these double outriggers for the overhangs, but the center section in the front of the house is going to be something different. And down below the deck, we're installing these LP Smart Side panels. They're 4x8 sheets. That'll just give it a different look down below the deck to help break up the really tall height of the front of the house. On the back side of the house, we started constructing the permanent railing, which is this half wall. This is only on the covered part of the back section of the house. This will give the homeowner a little more privacy, somewhere to hide out that's kind of more comfortable, and these walls will get siding on the inside and the outside. With the bulk of the siding up now, it's time to mask off the windows, break out the paint sprayer, and start putting some paint to this siding. To get this painting done really fast, I have a couple guys ahead of me cutting with some brushes in areas that I don't really want to get into with the paint sprayer. And then I've got another guy coming around with a paint shield with me, helping me man the hose and shield off areas we don't want to get paint on. Now in the middle of November, our next project is to get the decking down, and we're trying to get all of the outside stuff done here because winter is coming. First thing we got to do here is do some blocking so that we can run our decking in a special way you'll see in just a second. So here you can see this divider board that we've got to terminate the decking into, and this is so that we can use all full-length pieces and not have any butt joints. So right here we're realizing that our girder sticks up higher than our joist, which is going to cause a problem as the decking runs across, of course. So we had to take a power plane, take some of it off, then we covered the top with some zip tape so water doesn't get between those plies. And we are using hidden fasteners as well on this deck. You probably can't see that we are, but that's the reason you can't see any fasteners. Now up on the roof again in December, we're installing these yellow pine strips. They're 3/4 of an inch thick and 3.5 inches wide. And the metal roofing will screw to this, and those screws will bite a lot better in this really hard material. The shank won't want to ever spin and twist out like maybe it could if it was screwed into sheathing. So that's the reason for doing this. We're not going to do the roof, we're hiring roofers, but we just had a day, so we decided to get this done for them. After locating the neighborhood water line so we could actually get water to this house, we started in on putting the permanent railings on the deck, and we're using an all aluminum system here with horizontal balusters. It's by Envision Outdoor Living, and we've never done it before, so it took us just a minute to get ourselves calibrated and dialed in, get it going.
Set the mood from the dough. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes.
These posts surface mount to the deck through the decking, which means there has to be solid blocking directly below each of them, so we had to go around under the deck and make sure that was all done as well. And then it was nice that these had a leveling system with 4 Allen screws that you could put down through the flange to make sure the post was perfectly plumb. Otherwise, that's a pretty hard thing to do. And that brings us to our final and probably most frustrating thing we had to do on the outside finish of this house, which was to install the screening on this screen-in porch. And we did use a system called EZ Screen, but it's just not something we do all the time, so there's such a learning curve on doing it efficiently, and we weren't quite there yet. It did turn out good though in the finish. And with that, we were into mid-December with this project. The roof was getting put on, and on the inside of the house, we had contractors working on electrical, plumbing, HVAC, then insulation, and then drywall, and then we returned. It's time to prime the inside out. And the inside finish here will go a lot quicker in the video because I just did not shoot as many time lapses for whatever reason on the inside finish here. Our cabinet builder had great timing here. He showed up literally the minute we had the paint done in the kitchen, and he stayed and helped us install the cabinets, which was super helpful, of course, so we appreciate that. And with our kitchen and bath cabinets now installed, we are really in the home stretch of this build, just a little bit to go. Our next step is to trim all of the doors and windows. Here we're starting the window trim, and we built these as units on a flat table using pocket screws to assemble everything from the back so everything stays tight forever. I'm also realizing in this shot that the hardwood floors are in, and I said nothing about it. We did hire that out to another crew, and that's why you didn't see any of that get done, and it's just magically done now. And after all this work, the house caught on fire and burned to the ground. Just kidding, we did a blower door test with a smoke machine to check how tight the house was, and it was great. It's now mid-February on this job, 6 months into the project, and the next few weeks are filled with tons of tedious tasks like painting doors, polying trim, a whole host of other things that we're not going to get into deeply, but you're going to get to see them get done. So as we were wrapping up here, we realized that we needed to add a low point drain to this crawl space. Otherwise, if a pipe were to burst inside the house, like under the floor, this thing could just fill up like a swimming pool and have no way to get out. So we had to get a core drill to go through this solid concrete wall, and it took a while and it was a wild ride, but we finally did get it drilled through and popped the pipe through. Other finishing up items here included building some custom shelving for the closets. Jamie was on top of that, and he's really good at building like furniture grade stuff, so this was no problem for him. We also built these custom screen inserts that go above the girder between the beams on the screen-in porch. These were going to be really hard to screen in any other way, so that's why we did these. Down in the crawl space, we hired a company to do a sealed crawl space, which included laying down this really heavy gauge plastic, wrapping it up the walls, and taping it everywhere to completely seal it off. And up in the kitchen, we put several coats of this food-safe wax on all of these wood butcher block countertops, and this will seal them up and keep them looking nice for a long time. And finally, our last day of the job, about 7 months in, we installed some drains for a rain chain and some other gutter downspouts. And then we just covered any open ground with some straw to keep the homeowner out of the mud until they get their landscaping done in the spring. And that's it for an entire build, another one in the books, and it turned out great. If you want to see a more detailed version of this, we do have a 3-hour movie with all the details about all the steps of the process. If you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description. And thanks for building with us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.